So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our very first speaker for the day. We've got Michelle Collison from Mind Shift Theory, and she's going to give us a fascinating talk called Start Before You're Ready, the courage to live boldly. And it's about how waiting for the right time holds us back from fully embracing life. Now, Michelle is a trailblazer, an unapologetic nonconformist who fearlessly challenges the status quo with a simple question: why not? As an entrepreneur, author, and speaker, she has dedicated her life to breaking boundaries and redefining success on her own terms. In 2020, Michelle began a global movement aimed at unleashing the abundant potential within each of us. And through her business, Mind Shift Theory, she's on a mission to ignite a ripple effect of transformation that raises the well-being of 1 million people in her lifetime. And us here in the room today are going to be some of those people. So Michelle, over to you, please.
Have you ever had an idea that you were so excited about, that it was bubbling up inside you, and you couldn't wait to share it with everybody? But then you stopped dead in your tracks because you were worried that people would either tell you it's not possible, or they would tell you all the reasons why it won't work, or even worse, they'll think you're crazy. My biggest fear is that people will think I'm crazy. Either they'll think I'm crazy, or they'll think I'm full of myself. You see, I believe that I have found the answer, the solution to all the problems in the world. I have found the thing that will end inequality for women, it'll end discrimination, it'll even end world hunger and wars. But I'm so worried that people will think I'm crazy that I stopped talking about it. But today I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to stand up right here and tell you my idea, whether or not you think I'm crazy. You see, I believe that our entire experience of life happens right here. It happens in our head. And I call it the postal code, or in America we say the zip code. I'm going to use zip code because it sounds cooler. But it's the postal code in your head, the place you call home inside your head. And we all spend a lot of time up here. I also believe that we can choose the zip code in our head at any time. And I choose to choose the best zip code in my head every single day. But some people think I'm crazy, because in my zip code, everything is amazing. The world is a wonderful place. My life is abundant. My friends are incredible. My children inspire me every single day. And I don't age. In my zip code, I level up. Other people think I'm full of myself because my zip code is perfect. In my zip code, I am perfect. Life is perfect. But not perfect in the way that you may think. You see, I know that life has its ups and its downs. I've had my fair share of ups and downs. Even my starting point was shit. I was born the wrong color, in a time and place where racial discrimination was constitutional, and my opportunities were severely limited. But regardless of this, I still choose to live in the zip code of my choosing, the perfect zip code in my head. And at this point, you're probably wondering, how do you do it, Michelle? How do you live in this perfect world in your head when things go wrong in the world around us? To explain this, I want to talk about the difference between circumstance and experience. See, in life, these two things are happening at the same time, simultaneously, always. There's the circumstance, the events of the day, or the events as they happen, and then there's our experience of those circumstances. The circumstances can be things like, my flight was delayed by an hour, I got fired from my job. My husband came home late. The president said something that triggered me. I was in a car accident, or within 3 days, I went completely blind. All true stories. But my experience of each of these events can be very different depending on the zip code in my head, depending on the current place I call home inside my head. So let's look at the flight delay as an example. Raise your hand if your flight has ever been delayed by more than an hour. It's annoying, right? But my experience of this circumstance can be different, like I said, depending on where you live in your head. My experience could either be, this airline is the worst, it's so annoying, they couldn't even let us know earlier, and their staff at the desk, they're absolutely useless. I paid for a flight home today, they better be compensating me for this. Or my experience could be, oh shit, I'll just grab a cup of coffee and wait. Luckily, I brought a good book to read. Or my experience could be, thank freaking goodness they're fixing whatever needed fixing on the plane before we took off. Knowing what's happening in the air these days, right? But we tend to treat these two domains of circumstance and experience as if they are one and the same, as if the circumstance causes the experience, and as if we have no choice to choose a different type of experience. And we rationalize it. We say things like, anyone would feel the way I'm feeling in my circumstance, or anyone would struggle the way I've struggled if they went through what I went through. Why do we allow our circumstances to have such absolute control over our experience? I want you to think about this the next time someone makes you angry. And I want to share with you now how I came to the realization that not only can I choose my experience, but every time I do, it has a positive impact on my life and on everything around me. The tool that really helped me come to this understanding is a journaling practice. Journaling helped me think about my thinking. It helped me identify and separate the circumstance from the experience and realize that one doesn't cause the other. And this realization is not easy, especially when it comes to close family, like a partner or a child. I was not happy when I realized that my child's behavior did not make me angry. And in fact, I cried when I realized that it was not my behavior that had made my parents angry in the past. So I was preparing my whole talk for you guys today on how to prepare this amazing zip code in your life. When the feeling of hopelessness and despair suddenly hit me again. And it started when I thought about how crazy you'll think I am. And then the feeling of overwhelm grew heavier and heavier as I started noticing things that were happening to people around me. Things like relationship breakdowns, despair about the political situation, overwhelming loneliness, or even a medical report confirming cancer. These things were happening to people I love, not to me directly, but still I couldn't help shake this feeling of helplessness. And it's a feeling I remember feeling so many times before. There were many times in my life where my zip code in my head was not a good place. Like the time I lost my eyesight. You see, in 2022, I had a retinal detachment. Now, I have written a book about this, so I'm not going to go into detail. But I have the book because I believe that everyone needs to know the warning signs of retinal detachment and the urgent action that's necessary. But in summary, the retina is the membrane at the back of the eye that receives the light and converts it into signals that it sends to the brain, allowing us to see. mind detached, and I went blind within a few days. And over the course of 9 months, I had to have 4 different eye surgeries. And at that same time, I remember the same fear and the same hopelessness. And I don't know at the time if it was depression or not, but that is how it felt. There were so many days I felt lost, and I felt alone, and I felt defeated by the adversity. So when I began to recognize these same feelings bubbling up for me again, I looked back at my past experience to try and find the one thing that helped me push through what was a really horrible experience. Was it my resilience? Am I just an emotionally strong person? Hell no. Do I always see the bright side of every situation? No ways. Sometimes life really does suck, and I don't pretend otherwise. But I realized at this time that I was diligently journaling and learning so much about myself and about my brain. I can honestly say that journaling saved my life. Journaling helped me to stop focusing on the things that were going wrong, the things that were bad in my life. And I don't mean pretend that they don't exist. I still had to have the horrific eye surgeries. I was still uncertain whether I would ever gain vision in my eye again. And my arms were still bruised from all the needles injecting anesthetic into my veins. So how do we cope when things feel hopeless? I think we're asking the wrong question. It was actually just last week when a friend helped me realize this. We were walking around Nerja, and she asked me what she needed to be aware of about my eye condition so that she could be more mindful of my situation. And I said to her, well, firstly, I need you to stand on my left so I can see you. But then also, I am nearsighted, right? Hands up, all my nearsighted ladies. A few. If I remove my glasses and I look at an object, the further away that object is, the more blurry it becomes, right? So that's with my left eye. But we're lucky that glasses or contact lenses can bend the light to hit the retina in just the right place so we can see clearly. Well, in my right eye, where the retina has been lasered several times and has cells that have atrophied or died while it was detached, this eye has missing pieces of information or missing pixels. So when I look at an object, if I focus on that object with my right eye, it disappears. And unfortunately, glasses or contact lenses cannot bend light around my atrophied eye cells, nor do eye cells regenerate. But I've learned that if I look just to the side of the object, I can see it in my peripheral vision. So if I look at the object, it disappears. But if I look to the side, I can see it in the surrounding, in my peripheral. And that's when it hit me. Because I'm actually training my brain now to focus on an object by not focusing on the object. And I was like, oh my God, is this what I do with all the obstacles in my life? I try not to focus on the negative, but look at the surrounding and everything else around me. Because when you focus on anything, you put intentional thought on that thing. And that requires a lot of energy. And when we spend too much time focusing on the negative, we can start to ruminate and not move forward and get stuck repeating the same messages to ourselves, like life is unfair, or the government needs to fix things, or if my husband would just pull their weight. Or I even remember negotiating with God. Have you done that? Dear God, help me get through this, and I'll ... Or even worse, self-blame. I can't do this. It's my fault. I'm a failure. So what if, instead of focusing on the negative, we simply let go? What if we released ourselves from the pressure of the expectations that we set for ourselves? And what if, in doing so, we give ourselves the grace and the love and the freedom to simply be? And here's a radical idea. What if, in simply being, we realize that we are actually perfect just the way we are. And that we can try and fail and try again. And this process of trying and failing and trying again is actually the perfect way to overcome any obstacle in life. There is no better way. So maybe how we cope with tough times is not about resilience, and it's not about being strong or coping, but maybe it's about celebrating and not criticizing, but really celebrating every single one of our efforts. Because every day that we get up and try again is another day worth celebrating. Is this what self-compassion looks like? Here's another way to think about it. Show of hands, all the moms in the room. Now keep your hands raised if you can remember the day they took their first steps. Okay, awesome. I'm going to demonstrate my own personal experience, but you may remember something similar with your own child, or grandchild, or niece or nephew, or even watching a young animal learn to walk. I'm talking about that moment that left an imprint on your heart. That day, the child with their wobbly legs, their arms held out for balance like a tiny tightrope walker about to embark on the most daring feat of their life. And then it happens. A little shuffle, a foot lift hanging in the air for just a second before landing maybe a little bit too hard on the floor. Can you remember the anticipation bubbling up inside you? I'm going to share my experience.
Good girl.
Ever singing? And then the inevitable, right? They fell. But they did it. They took their first steps. And in that moment, can you feel it? The pride swelling up in your chest, the tears welling up in your eyes. In that moment, they are perfect. And can you remember what you did? You celebrated them, you cheered them on, you hugged them, you lifted them up. When they fell, you held their tiny hand and you encouraged them to try again. Now imagine if we did this, if we reacted this way for two key people in our lives, for yourself and for all the women around you. What if we believed in ourselves and in the women around us the same way we believed in that little toddler learning to walk? I'm sure we have no hesitation when we say to our toddler, "You are perfect, magnificent, awesome, extraordinary, a force for good in this world." Can we say to our friends, "You are perfect, magnificent, awesome, extraordinary, a force for good in this world"? And can we say to ourselves, "I am perfect, magnificent, awesome, extraordinary, a force for good in this world"? But why don't we do it? I mean, imagine with that little toddler learning to walk, imagine if we said, "Stop wobbling." If they fell and we said, "What a bad first impression you're making. I think you don't even care about walking. You're going to make a pretty bad adult. What will people think? That'll be embarrassing. I don't think you're ready to walk. I think we should read a few more books on walking, and maybe you should take a course." Do you know that it's actually a pretty selfish act for us to encourage our toddler to walk? I mean, who wasn't excited not to have to carry them around everywhere, right? It's a win-win situation. You get just as much out of it as the child does. And just like with the child learning to walk, when we encourage each other, we get just as much out of it. It's a win-win situation. And if we continue to treat each other in this way, the ripple effect will cause a global movement. And this is how we solve all the world's problems, by raising our collective well-being. Because when we feel good on the inside, we do good on the outside. So I have a quick challenge to you. In your booklets, on the page with my name on it, you'll see a box entitled "All the Perfect Women in Your Life." I want you to write your name at the very top, and then below it, the name of all the amazing women that are closest to you. Next to each name, I want you to write adjectives that describe them. And I've listed a few ideas to get you started. My favorites are bonkers, kind, and perfect. And the next time you see that person, the next time you look in the mirror, I want you to tell yourself exactly what you've written and tell them. A year ago, I sat where you guys are sitting when Ramonda J stood on stage and she encouraged us to turn to the women on our side and tell them, you are amazing. If you remember, if you were here last year. I don't know the person who sat beside me, but those words that they said resonated in my head and have become a part of my message. I am amazing. I am perfect. You are perfect. And those words, perfect, may not feel comfortable with you yet, and that's okay. But I took those words that I heard on the stage that day and I did something with it. And I want you to take the words that you're going to hear on the stage today throughout the day and do something with it. And the best way to do something with it is by creating good habits. So at the bottom of that page in front of you, the bottom right-hand side is a barcode for a habit checklist or a habit tracker if you want to use it. But something really, really close to my heart. As Georgina mentioned earlier, I am on a personal mission to raise the well-being of 1 million people before I reach level 50, actually. I have just over 2 more years. So if I have had even the smallest positive impact on you today, please scan the QR code at the bottom left-hand side and just click the big button to help me reach my target of impacting 1 million people. And in closing, you have a choice to accept yourself as perfect. Or if perfect doesn't yet feel right for you, use words like whole or complete. But starting today, what is the zip code that you're choosing to live in your head? Thank you.